So picture this, a blind guy. By day, he stands up in a courtroom in a nice suit and defends people accused of crimes. By night, he pulls a mask over his face and beats the living daylight out of those same kinds of people in a back alley. Same man. Sworn to uphold the law, and sworn to break every bone of anybody who breaks it. That's Matt Murdock. And this is the story of how a kid from Hell's Kitchen became Daredevil, and spent the better part of a decade trying and failing to put one very large man behind bars for good. Here's the shape of it. The whole saga runs across 2 shows and 56 episodes. 3 seasons of the original Daredevil on Netflix, then a revival on Disney Plus called Born Again that picks the story right back up. One continuous story. And unlike most superhero stuff, this one is grounded, brutal, and drowning in Catholic guilt. Born Again just wrapped its 2nd season on a nasty cliffhanger, with a 3rd one confirmed, so let's go all the way back and do the entire thing. Grab a drink, a snack, and here we go. It starts with the worst possible day of a little kid's life. A boy runs into the street and shoves a man clear of a truck.
Don't move, okay?
The truck spills its cargo, some kind of chemicals, straight into the boy's eyes. And just like that, 9-year-old Matt Murdock is blind for the rest of his life. Cut to the present. Grown-up Matt is sitting in a confession booth telling a priest about his father, an old-school boxer who lost more fights than he won, but never stopped getting back up. And then Matt drops the line that really worries the priest. He isn't there to apologize for something he's done. He's there to ask forgiveness for what he's about to do.
What exactly are you going to do?
Turns out what he's about to do is put on a mask and go break up a human trafficking ring down at the docks. He frees a group of terrified women, drops 4 armed men with nothing but his fists, and vanishes. Nobody sees his face. All the city knows is there's some guy dressed in black making life very difficult for very bad people. By daylight, Matt and his best friend Foggy Nelson are 2 broke lawyers opening their first firm. Foggy is the heart of the whole thing. Matt's ride or die since college. And their very first client walks through the door as a murder charge. A young woman named Karen Page, found in her apartment covered in a dead coworker's blood, holding the knife. Karen swears she was framed, and she's right. She stumbled onto a massive fraud at her construction company, a fake pension fund skimming a fortune. So somebody drugged her, killed the coworker she confided in, and set her up to take the fall. When that doesn't stick, somebody tries to hang her in her own jail cell, and the security cameras conveniently die right beforehand. Matt and Foggy get her out, and somewhere above all of it, a man whose name nobody will say out loud is quietly cleaning up loose ends. His right hand, a very polished guy in a very nice suit, tells his people to start a file on these 2 young lawyers. They might be useful someday. Oh, buddy, you have no idea. To really get Matt, you have to know his father. So the show rewinds. Young Matt patching up his dad after a fight. His father, Batlin Jack Murdock, is a journeyman boxer with a losing record and a soft spot for his blind son. One night, the local fixers offer Jack a big-name bout on one condition: take a dive in the 5th round. Jack agrees. Then he gets in the ring, decides his kid deserves to hear a crowd cheer for him just once, and knocks the guy out instead. He bets everything on himself to win and puts the money in an account under his son's name. He knows exactly what that choice is going to cost. That same night, the men he crossed murder him in an alley, and young Matt is the one who finds the body. It's quiet, it's ugly, and it's the whole reason Matt is who he is. Back in the present, a nurse named Claire finds a masked man dumped in her trash, barely breathing, and against every ounce of common sense, drags him inside and stitches him back together. She figures out fast that this guy is blind, can somehow smell a man 3 floors down, and soaks up a genuinely absurd amount of pain and barely reacts to any of it. She calls him Mike, since he won't give up his real name. Matt tells her the Russians running the neighborhood snatched a kid, and he walked into a trap trying to find him. So they finish the job together. He tracks the boy to a spot under a restaurant, and we get the sequence this show becomes legendary for. One long, unbroken hallway fight. Matt against a corridor packed with Russians. Everybody exhausted and stumbling and refusing to go down. He gets the kid home safe. Meanwhile, Foggy drags a shaken Karen out for a very drunken night at their local dive bar to help her forget she almost died. It's sweet. Hold on to that, because sweet does not last around here. Then comes the bowling alley. A man strolls in and kills another guy with a bowling ball to the head, on orders from you-know-who. His name is Healy, and he calmly asks for a lawyer. Guess who ends up representing him? The fancy suit from earlier strolls into Nelson and Murdock and offers them a fat retainer from a company with a name so vague it means nothing. Matt smells the setup instantly, but the firm is dead broke, so they take the bait and defend Healy for the bowling ball murder. Matt gives a heck of a closing argument, all about how the only thing that matters inside a courtroom is the facts, and morality can wait for outside these walls. And at night, the devil is out leaning on the scumbag who's blackmailing a juror, scaring him clean out of town. The jury hangs. Healy walks free. Big mistake for Healy, because the second he's out, the devil corners him and demands the name of the man behind all of it. And Healy, absolutely terrified, gives it up.
Who does he work for?
Wilson Fisk!
Then Healy explains why that name is a death sentence. Give up Fisk, and Fisk finds you, makes an example of you, and then does the exact same thing to everyone you love, so nobody ever talks again. Healy would rather go out on his own terms than let Fisk do it slower, so he does. Cheerful show. With all that happening, Karen refuses to let the fraud die. She tracks down the widow of the murdered coworker, gets nothing but a warning to drop it, and takes the whole story to a veteran newspaper reporter named Ben Urich. Ben's an old bulldog who's seen exactly what powerful people do to the people who dig. He's cautious, but he's interested. And in a quiet art gallery, we finally lay eyes on the big man himself, a giant in a perfect suit standing in front of a white canvas, meeting a sharp art dealer named Vanessa. He stares at that empty white square and admits it leaves him feeling alone. And just like that, the guy nobody would name has a face. And here's what makes Fisk such a nightmare. He isn't some lonely gangster with a temper. He's the quiet center of a whole alliance of very bad people. A heroin operation run by a soft-spoken woman you absolutely do not want to cross. A money man keeping the books clean while the bodies stack up. And a couple of even quieter partners tied to something a lot older and stranger than the mob. They all get rich off Fisk's chaos. And they all agree to pretend he doesn't exist. Every one of them matters down the road. File that away. Time to meet the two Russian brothers actually running the neighborhood, Vladimir and Anatoly. We learn they clawed their way out of a Russian prison dreaming of ruling America like kings. And now they've got a masked man wrecking their operation, and a partner whose name they aren't even allowed to say. That partner, Fisk of course, sends his right-hand man to offer the brothers help, which is just a polite word for a takeover. Vladimir tells him exactly where to shove it. Anatoly, the softer of the two, decides he'll go smooth things over himself. Terrible timing. Anatoly bursts in on Fisk in the middle of a quiet dinner with Vanessa, all smiles, ready to make peace. And Fisk, humiliated in front of the woman he's falling for, walks him outside and beats him to death with a car door. Then tells his men to send what's left back to Vladimir to start a war. And here's the thing about that scene. It's the moment the show tells you exactly who Fisk is. Soft-spoken, precise, weirdly polite, and a hair-triggered temper. And it just went off over a ruined date. And now Fisk pulls off his masterpiece. And it is genuinely chilling. Vladimir finds his brother's body and declares all-out war on the mask, which is precisely what Fisk wanted. What Vladimir doesn't know is that Fisk is about to wipe the entire Russian operation off the map and pin the whole thing on the Vigilante. Watch how he does it. Fisk takes Vanessa out to dinner, and by now she's figured out exactly what he is. She's even brought a small gun in her purse, just in case. He tells her the safest place in the world for her is right there by him. And weirdly, she believes him. Weirder still, so does he. Then in the middle of that dinner, he quietly steps away to make one phone call, and every Russian stronghold in Hell's Kitchen goes up at once. Bombs. A whole chunk of the neighborhood gone in a single night. And planted in the rubble, a black mask, so the entire city wakes up blaming the guy who has actually been trying to help. That's the play. Blow up the problem, frame the hero, and go back to your date like nothing happened. Fisk even sells it to Vanessa as him clearing out the monsters who once hurt a little boy. He's the villain, who is fully convinced he's the good guy, and that just makes him more terrifying. Meanwhile, Foggy and Karen have taken on a sweet elderly tenant getting muscled out of a rent-controlled apartment, and they're out on an accidental sort of date when the bombs go off all around them. Foggy catches some shrapnel in the chaos and still stops to help the people bleeding around him. And the devil, in the middle of it all, finds a badly wounded Vladimir and drags him off, because a dying Russian is the one man alive who can prove Fisk did all of this. And that is the setup for the trap that snaps shut on the devil next. He winds up cornered in an abandoned building with the bleeding Russian, surrounded by cops, and not the good kind. These are Fisk's cops, and they've been told to leave no witnesses. Matt keeps Vladimir alive the hard way, calling Claire and having her talk him through sealing a gunshot wound with a road flare, which is about as pleasant as it sounds. Also, the one guy who can bury Fisk stays breathing a little longer. Then Fisk gets on the police radio and just talks to him. Their first real conversation, and it's two philosophies staring each other down. Fisk says they're two of a kind, both of them out to save this city. The devil tells him they're nothing alike. Fisk offers a deal, kill the Russian, and they call it even for the night. Matt won't do it, so Fisk cleans house. He ties off the loose ends among his own crooked cops, then releases security footage framing the masked man for both the bombing and the dead officers. In one clean move, the devil goes from neighborhood rumor to the most wanted man in New York, a bomber and a cop killer. Fisk tells him the whole city will burn him in effigy. It's pretty bad. Matt and Vladimir escape down into the old sealed tunnels beneath the city, cops right on their heels. And Vladimir, running out of blood and time, chooses to stay behind and hold them off so Matt can slip away. But he first hands over one last thing, a name, the man who moves all of Fisk's money, Leland Owlsley. Then Vladimir tells Matt the truth he isn't ready to hear yet, that a man like Fisk will eventually take everything from him, the same way he took everything from Vladimir. And that sooner or later, Matt is going to have to decide whether he's willing to do the one thing he swears he never will. Vladimir dies buying him those few seconds, and Matt walks away with a name, a target, and an entire city that now wants him dead. So our altar boy has a face to chase and a whole world convinced he's a monster. And the man in the perfect white suit hasn't even gotten started. Right on cue, an even stranger problem walks into Matt's life. And he's old, blind, and meaner than a cornered badger. His name is Stick, and he's the man who trained Matt to fight as a kid. We flash back to it. A merciless blind warrior shows up at the orphanage, buys young Matt an ice cream, and teaches him to read the entire world through it. Every ingredient, the 2 states the milk came from, the dirt on the server's hand, all of it. He tells the boy his blindness isn't a curse, it's a gift, that nobody is ever going to feel sorry for him, so he'd better learn to grab the world by the throat. He takes a grieving blind kid and turns him into a weapon. Matt worshipped him. Then Stick walked out and left him. Now Stick is back, and he wants Matt's help destroying a weapon coming into the city by ship, something the ninjas call the Black Sky. Tied to a shadowy, never-ending war Stick has been quietly fighting his whole life. Matt agrees. On one rule, nobody dies. You can already guess how that goes, because when they crack open the container at the docks, the Black Sky isn't a bomb or a bioweapon. It's a kid, a scared little boy. Matt refuses to let Stick near him, and Stick, calm as anything, tells Matt he already put an arrow in the child while Matt was busy thinning out the guards. He wanted a soldier. Matt wanted a father. Neither one got what they wanted. They beat each other bloody, and Stick walks off into the night, leaving Matt his fighting sticks and a lesson he never asked for. And that war he keeps hinting at, it's not going anywhere. Stick has just decided Matt isn't ready for it yet. Tuck that away. Meanwhile, we finally learn what turned Fisk into Fisk. And oh, it is grim. Flashback. Little Wilson Fisk was not so little. A heavy, quiet kid has a monster for a father. A loud, violent bully running for city council. Drowning in debt to a loan shark. Taking every failure out on his wife and son with his fists. One night, watching his father beat his mother bloody, young Wilson picks up a hammer and beats the man to death. And his mother doesn't scream or run. She helps him take the body apart and carry it to the river over the next week. Everybody in the neighborhood just assumes Dad skipped town to duck his debts. That's the origin, and the grown Fisk still wears his father's cufflinks every single day. He tells Vanessa it's to remind himself that he's not a monster, that he's nothing like his old man. Sure, buddy. Sure. Here's the scary part. Ben Urich is finally ready to drag Fisk into the light and expose him as the shadow behind everything. And Fisk beats him to the punch. He calls a press conference, steps in front of the cameras, and does the one thing the man nobody could name has never done. He says his own name out loud, Wilson Fisk. And he spins the whole story, painting himself as a humble patriot who loves this city, branding the masked man as a terrorist, and framing his own reveal as bravely stepping into the light. In one move, he owns the narrative. So now, picture Karen and Ben sitting on the exact truth that would bury him, while overnight he becomes the most beloved man in New York. That's the wall they're up against. It is diabolical. Fisk's next move is where the show really twists the knife. He wants the tenement Elena Cardenas won't leave, and he wants to lure the devil into a trap. So he handles both at once. He has Elena murdered. Somewhere in here, Matt keeps circling back to his priest, quietly asking a very loaded question. Does the devil actually walk among us? And if you could stop a man like that for good, should you? He is talking himself toward killing Fisk, and deep down he knows it. Elena's death lands hard. Foggy and Karen loved her, and they spend the night at a wake drowning in guilt while Fisk goes on TV and publicly grieves her. The man who ordered her death, calling the devil a psychopath in the same breath. Watching him do this, you honestly start rooting for the devil to win by any means necessary. which is exactly the corner the show keeps backing Matt into. Matt tracks down her killer, then goes hunting for Fisk at the tenement. Except Fisk isn't there. Nobu is, a ninja with a chain and sickle who carves Matt up in the ugliest fight he's had yet. Matt barely puts him down, and it nearly ends him. You can feel how close he is now to becoming the exact thing Foggy is afraid of. Then Fisk strolls in and reveals the whole thing was his design. He wanted Matt and Nobu to take each other out. He had Elena killed just to bait the hook. Then he beats the already bleeding Matt half to death and leaves him for dead. Matt drags himself home and collapses, and his best friend Foggy, worried sick, lets himself in and finds Matt on the floor, in the mask. So the secret is out. Foggy can't even look at him. All these years he thought he knew his best friend, and he didn't really. We flash back to how these two met in law school. The wingman jokes, the dream of a little firm that helps the little guy, and now Matt has to explain all of it. The senses, stick, the ninjas, and the night he first pulled on a mask, when he heard a girl being hurt by her father, and the law couldn't touch the guy. So Matt made sure the man spent a month drinking his meals through a straw, and afterward he says, he slept like a baby. Foggy is terrified of what his friend has become. Matt insists the city needs the devil. Foggy tells him maybe the city does, but he never did. He only needed his friend, and he walks out. Two guys who built everything together, from a firm name scrawled on a bar napkin, watching it come apart over the one thing Matt could never bring himself to say. Meanwhile, Karen and Ben chase the one lead that scares Fisk, his mother, who everyone was told died years ago. They find her very much alive in a care home, her mind slipping, and she says the quiet part out loud. Her son killed his father. It wasn't his fault. And across town at a fancy benefit, someone slips poison into the drinks, and Vanessa collapses. Who did it? Just wait. Vanessa survives. 3 other guests don't. Fisk never leaves her bedside and swears whoever did it will suffer. Matt, meanwhile, is done getting sliced open in black pajamas. He learns Fisk wears body armor under that suit, so he goes to the gentle, frightened craftsman who makes it, a man named Melvin Potter, and asks for something of his own, not armor. A symbol. Melvin agrees as long as Matt promises to get Fisk off his back for good. The red suit is coming. Around the same time, Claire, the nurse who has kept Matt alive through all of it, finally has enough of stitching him back together and leaves the city. Not everyone gets to stay in a story like this. And then Wesley makes his move. Fisk's right hand, the smooth guy in the very nice suit, kidnaps Karen. He's worked out that she found Fisk's mother, and he sits her down with a gun on the table and lays out the terms. Convince Ben to kill the story and sing Fisk's praises, or Wesley kills Ben, then Foggy, then Matt, then everyone she loves, then her. He's so busy monologuing that he leaves the gun in reach. Karen grabs it, and she shoots him. Wesley, the closest thing Fisk has to a friend, dies on a basement floor, and Karen walks out carrying something she will never set down. The scared secretary from day one is gone. Whatever is underneath her, it turns out to be a lot harder than anyone guessed. Karen can't sleep, can't tell a soul, and nobody, Fisk included, has any idea Karen is the shooter. Fisk finds Wesley's body and comes apart, beating one of his own men to death in his grief, then vowing to hunt down whoever is behind the attacks on the 2 people he loves. What he doesn't know is the truth. The poisoning was his own money man, Owlsley, working with the drug runner Gao, trying to remove Vanessa because she was making Fisk soft. Fisk still believes he was the one they were trying to kill. He has no clue that the call is coming from inside the house. Matt, meanwhile, follows the drugs. Gao's heroin is the cash that bankrolls Fisk's entire dream, so Matt hits the operation to choke it off, and walks into a warehouse full of workers who blinded themselves out of pure devotion to Gao. He confronts her. She slips away, and he torches the product. And Gao doesn't just skip town. She tells Owlsley she's headed somewhere a great deal farther than China, and vanishes like she was never real. Keep her in the back of your mind too, because that woman is not done with anybody. But this stretch ends with the worst thing that's happened yet. Ben Urich, freshly pushed out of his paper, decides he'll publish the whole truth about Fisk himself. Tonight. He's hopeful. He's just come from his wife, who is losing herself to dementia and still told him his best work is ahead of him. And then Fisk shows up at his door for an off-the-record chat, calm and polite, and tells him the one thing he can never forgive is that Ben went to see his mother, and then he strangles him. He was hours from getting the story out. A good man, the one who only ever wanted to tell the truth, gone. Here's the thing about Fisk, though. His empire runs on paying everybody off, and the people you pay off are exactly the people who bury you. It starts to come apart when Fisk realizes Owlsley has been robbing him blind. Owlsley confesses to the poisoning, then plays his trump card. He's stashed the last dirty cop, Hoffman, as insurance. And if Owlsley ever stops checking in, Hoffman goes straight to the feds. Smart. Except Fisk hears that Owlsley is the reason Vanessa nearly died, and the rage takes over, and he kills Owlsley right there. Which means Owlsley stops checking in, which sends Hoffman running to the FBI. Between Hoffman's confession and a stack of documents Foggy's ex quietly copies from her old law firm, the case against Fisk finally has teeth. He gets arrested on live television.
To an attorney.
You are my heart.
An attorney, one will
You're
be provided
everything.
to you.
And for one night, the team gets to breathe. They even toast to it in the office. The three of them, plus the ex who came through. For a second, it feels like they won. For Elena. For Ben. But a man like Fisk does not go quietly. His men ambush the prison convoy in a storm of gunfire and break him loose. And in the back of that transport, Fisk tells a story. The Good Samaritan. The one where a beaten traveler is saved by a passing stranger. Fisk says he always believed he was the Samaritan, the good man in the tale. And then he admits the truth about himself. He isn't the Samaritan at all. He's the danger on the road. The one who jumped the traveler and left him for dead, on a road he never should have walked. Which, if you remember Matt in that confession booth asking whether the devil is real, lands like a gut punch. And that's when the masked man finally shows up in something new. The finished suit, red, armored, horns and all. One last brawl in an alley, and this time Matt does not lose. Fisk, pinned, sneers that one guy in a dumb costume can't change a thing. Matt proves him wrong and hands him to the cops. And when a stunned sergeant asks what to call the man in the horns, he gets his name, Daredevil. Even the cops razz it. Something about a stuntman jumping a canyon on a rocket bike? Goofy, sure. It grows on you anyway, and I like it. Fisk is in a cell. Nelson and Murdock patch things up and dig their busted sign out of the trash. The thing now so mangled it basically reads avocados at law. They aren't all the way back to what they were, and maybe they never will be, but they're pointed the same direction again. And for these two, that's basically everything. And Karen smiles along with everyone, quietly carrying a secret that no victory is ever going to fix. Season 1 ends with the Devil in Red, standing watch over his city, finally at peace with being both men at once. He has no idea that a ghost with a skull on his chest is about to make peace impossible. And here he comes, a man in a black shirt with a white skull painted across the chest, and a very simple worldview. Every criminal in Hell's Kitchen should be dead, and he's the one who's going to do it. But before we get to him, know that Matt and Foggy are already at each other's throats over the Daredevil thing. Foggy is exhausted, patching Matt up after every bad night, terrified of the day he finds his best friend beaten into a coma or arrested and disbarred. Matt's answer is always the same. If he skips even one night, somebody gets hurt. He's got the receipts to prove it. A battered wife who's alive today because the Daredevil got to her drunk, knife-wielding husband first. So Matt is not slowing down, and Foggy is not sleeping. At first, the city thinks it's an army. Somebody with military-grade firepower is wiping out the gangs one crew at a time. First, the Dogs of Hell, a biker gang, cut to pieces out on the highway, then the Irish mob, massacred at their own clubhouse. Then the Mexican cartel, hung on meat hooks and left to die. Whoever this is, they're precise, trained, and absolutely relentless. Every dealer and gun runner left in the kitchen is suddenly looking over their shoulder, because nobody knows who this man is or where he turns up next. Nelson and Murdock, meanwhile, are broke but proud, taking the kind of clients who pay in fruit baskets and homemade cobbler. Their newest is a low-level Irish gangster named Grotto, the one guy who crawled out of that clubhouse alive, which makes Grotto a walking target and a witness worth killing. And Matt, still moonlighting as Daredevil, goes digging into this one-man army. Foggy even braves a biker clubhouse to shake loose a lead, and nearly gets his throat cut for it, because that's the twist. It isn't an army at all. A dying gangster gives Matt the truth with his last breath. It's a single man. One person pulled all of this off alone. Cut to that man, lining up a shot on Grotto. Bang. Matt takes a bullet to the head diving in front of Grotto and only walks away because it grazes him. This shooter is that good. While Matt recovers and gets his cracked helmet rebuilt by his usual suit maker, the cops try to work out who they're up against. Their intelligence people build a profile and slap a name on him, the Punisher. And the name spreads fast, because this is something new. When the devil beats up criminals, the whole city cheers. When the Punisher shows up, the streets fill with corpses, and everybody starts wondering whether the vigilante business was ever a good idea to begin with, which is a question the season is really chewing on. Karen even says the scary part out loud to Matt. Maybe the city made the Punisher. Maybe letting Daredevil run wild is exactly what opened the door for a man with a gun who decides the law belongs to him. It's a straight line, and Matt does not enjoy having it drawn for him. The DA, a ruthless piece of work named Reyes, decides to use Grotto as live bait to draw the Punisher into an ambush. It goes about as well as you'd think. The Punisher smells the trap from a mile off, sets off a diversion, and strolls away clean. Grotto bolts, and Matt is left knowing the cops are never going to stop this man. Reyes, for her part, does not care in the slightest that she nearly got a room full of people killed. She's already spinning it, because bringing down the Punisher is going to be the case that makes her career. So the Punisher does the next logical thing. He kidnaps Daredevil, chains him to a roof, and the two of them have the conversation the whole season is built around. By now, Matt knows the man's name is Frank, and Frank has Matt figured out. He digs at the obvious wound, that Matt clearly lost someone too, that Matt is a soldier who never really came home from his own private war. Matt argues that Frank can stop, that killing fixes nothing, that the man he guns down deserves a courtroom and a judge. Frank fires right back that Matt's way is a joke. The war changes a man in ways he can never take back, and that beating a criminal senseless and letting him walk just means the guy's back on the street the next week. Hurting somebody new. Two men, same city, same grief, completely opposite answers. It's the best 40 minutes the show ever puts on screen. Frank's sharpest jab is that a mask lets you pretend the violence wasn't really you, that you can pull it all off at night and go home a good man. Soldiers, he says, don't get that luxury, and you can feel it land, because somewhere underneath, Matt knows he has a point. Then Frank makes his point in the cruelest way he can. He drags in Grotto.
Stop it, Frank! He doesn't deserve to die just because you caught him stealing cars!
Is that what you think?
It's up to the law, not me and not you!
Puts a loaded gun in Matt's hand and lays out the choice. Either Matt puts a round in Frank's skull, the only thing that would actually stop him, or Frank kills Grotto. And to twist the knife, Frank forces Grotto to confess what he really is. Turns out sweet, pathetic Grotto once shot a man on orders, then murdered the innocent old woman who happened to see his face. Matt still won't pull the trigger, so Frank does. He kills Grotto right in front of the man who swore to protect him. Either way, Frank tells him, this one's on you too. Then the bikers come for Frank, and Matt has to fight his way down an entire stairwell packed with them. Exhausted, half-broken, swinging a length of chain, refusing to go down. It's one man against a whole building, and it's the show reminding you exactly what the devil is willing to put his body through. Off the clock, Karen is working her own angle, leaning on a nervous assistant DA to pry loose whatever the office secretly knows about the Punisher, and starting to wonder if her own DA is the dirty one. Grotto gets a funeral almost nobody comes to. Matt sits in the pew and listens to his priest give a quiet little eulogy about how every single person is a whole world, and how when one is lost, a world goes with them. Afterward, Matt admits what's really eating him. Guilt. He promised to keep Grotto safe and he failed. And the priest tells him something Matt carries the rest of the season. Guilt isn't a wound, it's a signal. It means the work isn't finished yet. Meanwhile, the head of the Irish, a nasty old boss named Finn, flies in furious. The Punisher stole over $1 million of his money and killed his son, and he wants both back. One of them still breathing. His men track Frank through his dog, grab him, and go to work torturing him for cash. Matt gets there in time to pull Frank out, and the two of them carve through the Irish together. Matt barking at him the whole way not to kill anyone, and then bleeding out on the ground afterward. Frank finally tells Matt why he is the way he is. Frank came home from war, a decorated Marine, and the best moment of his life was walking into his little girl's classroom and having her sprint across the room into his arms. That night, she begged him to read her favorite bedtime story and tuck her in the way he always used to. He was so tired he told her tomorrow, he promised. There was no tomorrow. His whole family got caught in a gunfight in the park, and the last time Frank held his daughter, she was already gone. That is the Punisher, not a psycho. A father with absolutely nothing left to lose. Frank gets arrested, and Matt makes sure the one cop who's always given him a fair shake, a sergeant named Brett, takes the credit for the collar, because Matt needs the city to believe the system still works, not the Punisher's justice, not the Daredevil's. And the man finally gets a full name in the papers, Frank Castle, the monster of the week. There's light in here too, though. Matt and Karen's thing finally starts to move. He walks her home in the rain and asks her out to dinner. For about 5 minutes, it looks like Matt Murdock might actually get to be happy. There's even a running gag that for a guilt-ridden Catholic, letting himself be happy might be the most reckless thing he's ever tried. And then he walks into his own apartment, and there's a woman sitting in the dark, someone out of his past. Her name is Elektra. Elektra is trouble in the most expensive way imaginable. Rich, gorgeous, reckless, and the one person who ever made Matt feel like the darkness in him wasn't a defect, but a gift. We flash back to how they met in college. A whirlwind romance built on danger. her forever daring him to let go of that iron control. Until the night it went too far. Elektra tracked down the man who murdered Matt's father all those years ago, tied him up, put a knife in Matt's hand, and told him to finish it. She wanted to watch Matt become who she was sure he really was underneath. He beat the man bloody, but he would not kill him. He called the police instead, and that was the end of them. Now she's back, pulling Matt into a job. Officially, she needs a lawyer to claw her family fortune out of a shady megacorporation called Roxxon. Unofficially, she is already breaking into their systems, poking a far bigger and far more dangerous nest. And what she really wants is Matt's fists for backup. And it slowly dawns on Matt that she engineered the whole thing. The danger, the reunion, all of it just to reel him back in. With Elektra, the affection and the manipulation are the same move every single time. And here's the thing the show pulls off so well. Matt now has two women tugging him in opposite directions. Karen, who is warm and steady and stands for the normal, happy life he could genuinely have. Their real first dinner, all chili pepper lights and cheap wine and one perfect night, is about as sweet as this show ever lets itself get. And Elektra, who stands for the exact part of himself he spent his whole life trying to bury. One is the light, one is the dark. Guess which one is more fun to watch? Speaking of Karen, she's convinced there's more to Frank than the papers are printing, so she breaks into his empty house, finds a photo of him, his wife and his children beside a carousel, and starts pulling threads. And the deeper she digs, the more she suspects the Punisher isn't the real story at all, that Reyes is using him to bury something much bigger. After the two of them fight off a squad of Yakuza together, Matt and Elektra grudgingly become partners. His one hard rule is that nobody ends up dead. Hers is no sex, which she seems far more disappointed about than he is. And that nest she kicked over turns out to be the Yakuza, who never actually left the city. They just went quiet and let Fisk and Daredevil clear out every last one of their rivals. And now they're ready to take the whole thing. Matt and Elektra break into a corporate vault and steal a ledger that spells it all out. Guns, drugs, human beings trafficked in by the shipload, and tucked away amongst it all, one single entry written in code that nobody can crack. Whatever these people are actually building, it is worse than everything else combined. And when the man running the operation is accused of being Yakuza, he just smiles and asks whoever said he was. These aren't only gangsters, they're something else. Meanwhile, Reyes is trying to fast-track Frank straight onto death row, and Matt works out she is burying something big. So Nelson and Murdock do the completely insane thing. They take Frank Castle's case. Foggy thinks it's career suicide, and he's probably right. But Matt looks at Frank and sees a person instead of a headline. And he can't stomach letting the man get quietly executed just to hand a corrupt DA her hero moment. Karen goes to see Frank in the hospital, and it's the loveliest scene in the whole run. Frank, terrified his memories of his family are slipping away, asks her to describe his house, and the two of them trade little stories about his kids until he can breathe again. She reminds him that his family loved him. He thanks her for helping him remember. You forget, for a second, that he's a mass murderer. The plan is simple. Get Frank to plead guilty, save his life, keep everybody safe. So naturally, standing in that courtroom, Frank looks the judge dead in the eye and pleads not guilty. Because Frank does not want a deal, he wants a trial. He wants every ugly secret dragged out into the daylight, no matter who it burns down with him. So Nelson and Murdock just became the legal team for the most hated man in New York. And somewhere behind the Yakuza, behind that one coded line in the ledger, something a whole lot older and a whole lot worse is finally starting to wake up. Frank Castle's trial opens with the whole city already sure he did it. Because he did. Nelson and Murdock are defending a man who shot his way through the underworld and left a body count you could see from orbit. The prosecutor, D.A. Reyes, barely has to try. The jury pool calls him the Punisher to his face. One guy says the city ought to be calling him a hero, so the defense goes for the only door left. He isn't a monster, he's a broken soldier, and the DA's office is dirtier than he is. Because Foggy sniffs out something real. The autopsy records from Frank's rampage were doctored, and the medical examiner who faked them got threatened into it. Pull that thread and you don't just save Frank, you expose Reyes. It's a good plan. It would have worked. Except Matt is living a second life after dark, and it's about to blow up the first one. That coded line in the Yakuza ledger from before did not lead to a stash of drugs. It led to something older. Matt and Elektra have been hunting it, and Elektra, being Elektra, decided the fastest way to help was to break into the medical examiner's home and terrify him into flipping, which taints the witness, which gets his whole testimony tossed, which torches the one lead that could have buried Reyes. Foggy figures out Matt lied to him again, about Elektra, about the night work, about everything, and he says the quiet part out loud. Elektra isn't the problem, Matt is. Nobody makes him lie to his friends over and over. He does that to himself. Then Foggy makes a Hail Mary. He puts Frank on the stand and asks him to talk about the day his family died, to let the jury see the grieving father instead of the killer the papers built. Frank won't do it. He turns cold and hostile on the first question and refuses to hand them the wounded man. So Foggy argues it for him. Frank isn't some ordinary crook. He's a good man who's lost the line between right and wrong, and what he needs is help, not a cage. And then Frank burns the whole thing down. He asks to speak, and he tells the room he would do every kill over again. That he isn't crazy, that he knows exactly who he is, that he put those men down because he enjoyed it. He calls himself the Punisher and declares he's guilty, again and again, and buries himself under a stack of life sentences. Foggy is gutted. That was not the man he prepared a day earlier. Somebody got to Frank between the prep room and the stand. Meanwhile, that older thing is done hiding. One night the ninjas come, a pack of them closing in from every side inside a high tower, and they fight wrong. No sound, no heartbeat Matt can find. Elektra takes a blade during the swarm, and those blades are poisoned. Matt gets her to the one man who might save her. Stick, the mean old sensei from before. He brews up some battlefield antidote and starts talking, and the shape of the enemy finally has a name. An ancient organization, older than most countries, that survived by living in shadow and getting people to believe in its legend. In this stretch, they finally say it out loud.
Yaminote. It means the hand.
The hand is chasing one thing above all, a weapon out of legend called the Black Sky. Nobody's sure what it does, only that whoever holds it can supposedly do anything. Stick drops one more grenade while he's stitching Elektra back together. He knows her. He trained her too, when she was a kid, the same way he trained Matt. To Stick, she's Ellie, the other soldier he raised for this exact war and then walked away from. Here's where Elektra scares Matt for real. During the fights, she captures a young hand assassin, and instead of walking away, she kills him. A kid, basically. Matt is shaken to his core. She looks at him and asks if he still wants her now that he's seen it. Matt keeps insisting she can choose to be good, the way he does every single day. She's not sure she believes him. And then the dead start walking. A man Matt personally watched die in fire is upright and breathing and swinging blades in Hell's Kitchen again. His name is Nobu, and he sits at the very top of the whole organization, which raises the obvious question, how is he alive? The answer is the ugliest thing in the whole run. Claire, the nurse who keeps patching Matt up, ends up with a group of rescued people whose blood work reads like nightmare fuel. They weren't just bled. They were drained carefully over months, kept alive in cages as living factories while the hand pumped strange substances through them and harvested it all. Whatever came back out of those cages came back broken. One of them took a scalpel to his own father. That's the engine. That's how the hand cheats death. Matt got there, but not soon enough. Now the trial's fallout lands like a bomb. D.A. Reyes calls the lawyers in for a meeting, and while everyone's circling, Reyes is gunned down and killed. And the entire city draws the easy line. The Punisher escaped. The Punisher hates the system. The Punisher did it. Cops across the whole city want him gone, and his jailbreak hands them the perfect story. Except that's wrong, and Karen is the one who starts pulling it apart. Karen has been digging with Ellison over at the paper into the thing Reyes was so desperate to bury. And it comes out. A year back, the prosecutors caught wind of a fresh face in the drug trade. A supplier pushing pure heroin at volumes nobody had seen. A man who didn't want a cut of the market. He wanted to own it outright. On the street, they knew him only as the blacksmith. The blacksmith set up a meet between three gangs who hated each other. The Dogs of Hell, the Kitchen Irish, and the Cartel. And Reyes let the sting go forward in a crowded public place. Central Park, middle of the day. It fell apart. The blacksmith never showed. The gangs panicked, and the shooting that followed killed Frank Castle's wife and kids. Reyes spent a year altering records and reports to bury the fact that her botched operation put those civilians in the ground. That's the cover-up. That's what she died to protect. Which brings us to prison, and to the best chess in the whole season, because Wilson Fisk is in there too. The big man, once the most feared thing in the city, now playing humble inmate, head down so his appeal can spring him, and into his lap walks the one weapon he can't buy anywhere else, Frank Castle, in a cage, hungry for answers. So Fisk makes an offer, and I have to admire how slick it is. There's a prisoner named Dutton who runs a whole cell block and makes Fisk's life miserable. Dutton also happens to be the man who brokered the Central Park meet. Fisk can hand Frank safe passage and a 7-minute gap to get at Dutton, squeeze the answers loose, and slip back out. All Frank has to do is put Dutton down on the way. Fisk gets his rival gone, Frank gets his lead, and Fisk keeps his own hands clean while calling it a rising tide that lifts all ships. Frank hates it. Frank does it anyway. He gets to Dutton, gets him talking, and finally hears the name, the Blacksmith. Then Fisk shows his real face. The plan was always to have Frank killed on the way back. Close the loop. No loose ends. It doesn't take. Frank survives the ambush, because of course he does. And Fisk, watching this man cut through everything thrown at him, changes his mind mid-slaughter. You don't waste a gift like that. So instead of a corpse, Fisk keeps him. He tells Frank he's in control now and sets him loose. Fisk personally launches the Punisher back onto the streets, partly to clear his own path, partly because he now owns a favor from a walking apocalypse. Out in the world, Frank goes hunting, and Karen learns the truth she's been circling. Frank did not kill Reyes. Frank was parked outside Karen's apartment the night the blacksmith's crew came for her, and without him there, she'd have died. Somebody killed Reyes knowing the city would hang it on the Punisher, and it worked. The real target now is Karen, because she and the paper got too close. Frank tracks a shipment to a boat, muttering his little kill count rhyme. 1 batch, 2 batch, penny and a dime. He grabs a man he's sure is the blacksmith, and the guy breaks and confesses to all of it. Wife, kids, everything, just to make it stop. And Daredevil, who has followed the trail here too, stops him. Because Matt can hear the man's heartbeat, and the man is lying through his teeth. This guy isn't the blacksmith. Kill him and they lose the only thread they've got. Frank almost pulls the trigger anyway. He doesn't. So who is the blacksmith? Karen goes to interview the one man who knew Frank best in the war, his old commanding officer, a decorated colonel writing his own version of the Frank story. And while she's in that living room, Frank arrives and tells her exactly who she's been drinking tea with. The colonel is the blacksmith. Frank's own former CO built the heroin empire, arranged the meat, and got Frank's family killed as collateral. And then the colonel says the thing that reframes the entire season. Frank thinks this is all about one dirty heroin run. It isn't. It never was. This is about what all of them did over there in Kandahar. Something in Frank's past that certain people will kill forever to keep buried. The dead wife, the dead kids, the park, all of it. Just clean up for a much older sin. Karen begs Frank not to do it. She tells him if he pulls that trigger, she's finished. He's dead to her. Frank tells her he's already dead, and he kills the colonel with the man's own gun. Back in the Ninja War, the Hand finally corners Elektra, and Nobu says it to her face. She is the Black Sky. Their greatest living weapon, the child they lost long ago, hidden away with a diplomat's family by Stick himself, now grown up and back within reach. For a terrible moment, she almost takes it, because it explains everything. The pull to the violence, why people always leave. But Matt gets to her. He tells her nobody gets to decide what she is, and the way to prove the Hand wrong is to save Stick instead. She turns on her own captors and cuts Stick free. Nobu's answer is simple. Daredevil must die. So the Hand builds a trap out of the one thing Matt can't ignore. They dig up the police records of everyone Daredevil has ever saved and start snatching them. Ordinary people, using them as live bait to draw the Daredevil into a building. Before Matt walks in, Melvin hands him a gift, a custom baton on an indestructible cable that can grapple, extend, and crack skulls. The Billy Club. Some people in the neighborhood, Melvin says, know full well who actually keeps them safe. Matt goes in and clears the hostages out, over Elektra's flat objection that it's a mistake, because he will not leave innocent people to die for a cleaner tactic. Then they climb to the roof for the last stand, and Matt says the thing he's been circling all season. He wants to run away with her. He admits the devil is a part of himself he needs, and she's the only one alive who gets it. Wherever she runs, he runs with her. The Hand pours onto the roof. In the middle of it, Nobu goes for the kill, drives a blade straight at Matt, and Elektra steps into it. She takes the strike meant for him. She dies in his arms, telling him that for the first time, she knows what it feels like to be good. She asks if it always hurts this much. Matt tells her yes. It always hurts this much. Frank arrives in time to save Matt from the swarm, calls him Red one last time, and vanishes back into the dark to become the thing the city made him. After, Matt buries Elektra himself. Stick shows up at the grave and asks if loving her was worth it, after everything it cost. Matt says it was, and he corrects Stick on one small thing. She liked orchids, not roses. And the rest of Matt's life quietly comes apart and reassembles. Nelson, Murdock, and Page is finished. Foggy takes a job at a big powerhouse firm. The kind with a name like a phone book, and even leaving, he promises Karen she isn't alone. Karen, stuck at the paper glaring at an empty page, gets pushed by Ellison to stop chasing other people's stories and write her own truth. So she writes about the neighborhood's real hero, the ones who split their knuckles keeping everyone else safe, who live right beside the rest of us and almost never get the credit. And then Matt asks Karen to meet him on a rooftop. He tells her he has something she needs to see. And after a whole 2 seasons of lies, he finally gives her the truth. He is Daredevil. So Daredevil is standing on a roof with his mask in his hand, telling Karen who he really is, while the woman who understood him best is in the ground. It feels like the end of something. It is nowhere near the end of what's coming for him. The thing coming for him wasn't another villain. It was a building. Matt walked into one just as it came down around him, and the rubble buried him so completely that for weeks everyone who loved him was certain he was dead. He wasn't. He washed up broken in the one place he swore he'd never see again, the Catholic orphanage where he grew up, sewn back together by a sharp-tongued nun named Sister Maggie. His right ear is wrecked, so the radar sense that maps his entire world keeps cutting out on him. He says it feels like moving underwater, and he is grieving Elektra so hard he's convinced she was in the rubble right beside him, even though she's been dead for months. He keeps asking the nuns where she went, and they keep having to tell a half-delirious, heartbroken man that the woman he's looking for was never there at all. So Matt does what Matt does when everything hurts. He turns to God. The old priest who took him in, Father Lantham, tries to reach him with the tale of Job, the Lord's most loyal servant, a man who prayed face down in the dirt every dawn and got repaid by watching all 10 of his kids get slaughtered, his lands burned, his skin flayed to bloody welts, and who still refused to curse God's name. Matt's takeaway is a little different. He decides Job was a sucker, because that was him. He suffered willingly, bled without a word of complaint, all because he thought he was one of God's soldiers. Not anymore. He tells the nuns he's seen God's true face now, and from here on he is only what he does in the dark, and he bleeds for nobody but himself. Maggie isn't buying the tough act. She's been a nun for 30 years and she knows self-pity when she hears it. She also knew his father, the boxer who went down again and again in the ring and never once stayed down. That's the man Matt has to dig back up, because the reason he's not ready to die yet is sitting in a jail cell across town, Wilson Fisk. And Fisk is about to pull off the smartest, ugliest move of his whole rotten life. Here's the play, and it's a work of art. Fisk goes to the FBI and offers to hand over a small army of other criminals, an Albanian syndicate, in exchange for a lighter touch. The feds bite hard, because a cooperating Fisk is the kind of witness that makes careers. Then, to sell the idea that he's too endangered to keep in general population, the big man arranges to have himself stabbed by another inmate in the prison weight room. He has himself shanked, on purpose, and it works exactly as designed. The Bureau pulls him out of prison and tucks him into protective custody, which turns out to be a $20 million penthouse at the Presidential Hotel. A hotel that, surprise, Fisk quietly owns. The city loses its mind. Their most feared crime boss traded a cell for a suite with a skyline view, and everyone can see the con, and no one can prove it. The agent stuck babysitting him is Ray Nadeem, ambitious, buried in debt, propping up a house full of family on a salary that doesn't stretch, passed over one too many times. Exactly the kind of decent cornered man who talks himself into believing that a deal with the devil is really just the career-making case that fixes everything. Nadeem lays down the rules, the ankle monitor, the schedule, the whole leash, and Fisk just smiles and gives him a little speech about how a cage of stone and steel is nothing, because any determined man escapes one eventually. The only true prison is love. Fisk is doing every bit of this for one reason, and her name is Vanessa. The woman fled the country to stay out of handcuffs after everything that happened, and Fisk intends to buy, blackmail, and murder his way to getting her back safely in his arms. The deal, the penthouse, the dead agents, the killer he's about to build, all of it's just furniture he'll shove aside to clear a path to her. A man that dangerous with only one thing left in the world to love is somehow worse than a man with nothing. To sell the marked man story, Fisk orchestrates an ambush on his own prison transport and makes it look like the Albanians came for him. 5 federal agents die so Fisk can have his penthouse, and he has the gall to lecture the survivors that they better make those deaths mean something. Cold, efficient, evil, classic. And Ray Nadeem, give him this, is not a stupid man. Somewhere in the back of his skull the math keeps failing to add up. The convenient ambush, the way every fresh catastrophe keeps landing Fisk in a better spot than the one before. But Nadim is in too deep to walk away clean, with far too much riding on this being the case that finally saves his family. So he keeps telling himself he's the one running the situation. He isn't. He's the one being run. Around the same time, the Bureau has a SWAT sniper on its payroll, and this guy is a quiet catastrophe waiting to happen. He's a frighteningly gifted marksman, the kind who can put a shot exactly where it needs to go without a flicker of doubt. A human aimbot in a bulletproof vest. He's also cracked somewhere deep inside. He does mandatory therapy for all the killing his job requires, and the only support system, he claims, is a bartender named Julie he gets pizza with most nights. Though the way he talks about her sounds less like friendship and more like a fixation she never signed up for. His name is Dex, and Fisk, who reads people the way you and I read a menu, takes one look at that lethal, lonely FBI agent and sees the perfect weapon just waiting for someone to aim him. Here's what makes Dex so dangerous. And so sad. He doesn't come with a moral compass of his own. What he has instead is a set of rules, and a therapist who taught him to survive by locking onto one fixed point. A single North Star, and building his whole self around it. As long as he has that anchor, he stays pointed and controlled. Take it away, and the aim can swing anywhere. And right now, every anchor he's got is coming loose. The therapist who kept him steady is out of the picture. He flatly refuses to accept a replacement. And the fixation he leaned on curdles the moment the woman on the other end of it makes clear she wants no part of him. So Dex becomes a loaded gun with nobody left to hold him steady. Which is the exact moment Fisk strolls into his life, offering to be the new North Star. Meanwhile, Matt drags himself off the mat. He recovers by boxing in the church basement, feeling for the vibration of the subway trains under the floor to reorient himself. And slowly, Daredevil comes back online. Except he comes back wrong, colder, harder, convinced that the law is a joke and the only way to stop a man like Fisk for good is to stop his heart. He is done being the nice version of himself. So he goes to work. He forges his way into a prison, posing as a lawyer under his own partner's name, to squeeze a jailed contact for a lead on how Fisk beat the system. He gets made, and what follows is Matt against a whole block of inmates and dirty guards in a brutal, drawn-out brawl down a corridor. Classic. Taking an absolute beating and refusing to go down, exactly like his old man in the ring. He gets what he came for and crawls out the other side, a meaner, grimmer man than the one who fell into that building. And then his careful little solo mission runs face first into the two people he loves most. Because Foggy Nelson is alive and well and completely wrecked to discover that his dead best friend is not dead, just a liar with excellent survival skills.
Matt! Matt, where the hell are you?
He's not here.
Karen finds out too, and Foggy takes one look at this darker, meaner Matt and tells Karen flat out that their friend came back changed. Foggy, God love him, has picked his own weapon in this war, and it's the law. He announces a long-shot write-in bid for district attorney, running to unseat the current DA, a man named Blake Tower who's doing absolutely nothing while the feds tuck Fisk into a luxury hotel. Foggy's whole pitch is that evil only wins when good men sit on their hands. It's noble, it's a little doomed, but it's very Foggy. Karen picks up her own weapon, and it's the front page. She's back at the Bulletin working the Fisk story like a woman with something to prove, digging for anything that shows the great cooperation witness is running a scam from a penthouse. The trouble is, her editor won't print a syllable of it without hard, verified proof. And Fisk has spent a fortune making sure no such proof exists. So Karen is sitting on the story of the year with no way to run it, which means the whole fight comes down to finding one person willing to put the con on the record. While the good guys regroup, Fisk closes his fist around Dex. He gets hold of the sharpshooter's psych file and learns exactly which buttons to press. He arranges to bump into the man, plays the understanding father figure, and starts becoming the one fixed point Dex organizes his whole fractured life around. Fisk even opens up about his own childhood, the hammer, the father he killed as a boy, and the mother who looked at what he'd done and loved him anyway, without an ounce of shame. That, Fisk tells him, is the gift he's offering. Someone who will accept the real Dex and never abandon him. He is grooming a killer with the promise of being seen. Part of Matt wants to kill Fisk. He's decided the law simply cannot touch the man, and after everything he's buried, ending it for good doesn't sound like the worst plan he's ever had. But Foggy and Karen refuse to watch their friend cross that line to win, and they talk him into trying it their way one more time. Build the case, get the proof, expose the con and let the system do its job. Just one more time. So the three of them go hunting for the one loose thread that can unravel the whole thing, the inmate who stabbed Fisk in prison, a man named Jasper Evans. the living proof that Fisk arranged his own attack to game his way into that penthouse. Matt tracks Evans down and gives him a simple choice: talk, on the record, and get help disappearing somewhere Fisk can't reach. Or don't, and get left for the man he betrayed. Evans is terrified that Fisk will murder his son, but he agrees. So, they bring him to the New York Bulletin, Karen's newspaper, to get his confession on tape in front of witnesses and Karen's editors. Somewhere too public for Fisk's lawyers to bury. It's a good plan. On paper, it ends the whole thing. Get the words recorded, expose the stabbing, and the penthouse of cards comes down. Fisk is a step ahead of all of it. He gives Dex his final gift and his final instructions. A black replica of the Daredevil suit. Go be your true self. The lights in the newsroom die, the phones go dead, and a man in a Daredevil suit walks into the Bulletin and turns it into a slaughterhouse. He moves through the place like a blade through paper, and he is there for one thing above everything else: to make sure Jasper Evans never finishes his sentence. He kills the witness before the confession can ever be recorded. He cuts down the agents sent to protect it, and he does all of it in the Daredevil's hands and baton style, so there is no mistaking whose work it's meant to look like. And he corners Karen, who recognizes him at once, because she has met this man and shaken his hand. She says his name out loud, Dex, and the thing wearing Daredevil's face tells her the real him is finally out to play, and that it's so nice to see her again. And here's the cruelest part. Matt is standing right in the middle of it, and he can't do a thing. He heard it coming, and he tried to get Karen and Foggy clear, but he is a blind man in a packed newsroom with no suit and no way to become Daredevil in front of 100 witnesses and every camera in the building. So the one time it matters most, the man who saves this city saves no one. By the time it's over, Jasper Evans is dead. Good people are dead. Foggy and Karen are down and shaken in the wreckage, and every survivor and every security camera in that building walks away certain of one simple poisonous fact. Daredevil did this. So the man who came back from a collapsed building to save his city just watched that city get taught to hate him again by a monster in his own colors, on the orders of a man sipping wine in a hotel he owns. Fisk finally has everything he wanted: a clean name, a private army of one, and a straight shot at bringing Vanessa home. And the only people left who know the truth are a broken man and the two friends bleeding beside him. A broken man in a borrowed mask is a lousy position to fight from, but Matt goes to work anyway. The whole city is convinced Daredevil butchered a newsroom full of people, so the first job is proving the thing in the black suit was never him. He goes to the one man who could have built that suit, the nervous armorer who made his gear, and the guy cracks, because Fisk got to him the way Fisk gets to everyone, by putting a knife to the one person he loves. Fisk forced him to sew a second Daredevil suit for somebody else. Then Fisk forced him to keep Matt talking long enough for the FBI to kick the door in and catch the real Daredevil holding the evidence, framing him for the massacre for good. Matt barely fights his way out, but he leaves with the one thing he came for. The fake Daredevil is a federal agent. That single fact is the crack in the whole scheme, and Matt, Foggy, and Karen start working it like a pry bar, even as the city hunts all three of them. Because if the public ever learns that the great cooperating witness has been running a masked killer straight out of the FBI's own house, the con collapses on top of Fisk. Their best and only real shot at prying it open is Ray Nadeem, the agent who's been loyally carrying Fisk's water, if they can somehow make him see the monster he's actually been serving. And what Fisk has quietly become is worth saying out loud, because it finally gets a name. Nadeem gets pulled deep into the inner circle, and what he finds turns his stomach. A private club inside the bureau, a crew of federal agents shaking down every criminal outfit in the city and funneling the money straight up to one man. A man they are so careful about they never say his name out loud, only his code name, Kingpin. That is what Fisk is now. Not a cooperating witness, not a prisoner in a nice suit, a crime lord with a stable of federal agents in his pocket and a code name whispered by the very people sworn to catch him. His weapon of choice is still Dex, and Dex is quietly coming apart. Turns out he's been like this since he was a boy, a kid who hurt small, helpless animals and then calmly told his therapist that he tried not to enjoy it, and enjoyed it anyway. The only thing that ever kept that pointed in a safe direction were a strict set of rules and a fixed point to orbit, one person to build himself around. But the therapist who gave him those rules, the last steady anchor he had, recently died, and that empty space is exactly where Fisk installed himself, murmuring that he alone sees the real Dex and will never walk away. So the loneliest, deadliest man in the city now belongs to a monster, body and soul, and can't even feel the leash. While all that closes in, Matt gets hit with the one thing he never saw coming, and it has zero connection to Fisk. He learns the truth about the nun who's been stitching him back together this whole time. Sister Maggie is his mother. She had him as a baby, and in the grip of a darkness she had no name for back then, a sickness that took hold after the birth. She became convinced she was a danger to her own son, and that keeping him was a betrayal of God. So she gave him up and disappeared into the church. And the two men Matt trusted most, the old priest and the blind old sensei who trained him, both knew the whole time, and both decided he was better off believing he was an orphan alone in the world. Stick, in his charming way, tells Matt she walked out on both of them because she was terrified of the same devil in them that she feared in herself. It guts Matt. He confronts the priest over a game of pool. He wants to be furious at every one of them, and he has earned that much, but the anger has nowhere good to go, because the woman is standing right there, and she has spent his whole broken recovery quietly loving a son who had no idea he was hers, a woman who gave him away not because she didn't want him, but because a sickness convinced her that letting go was the only way to keep him safe. Karen is carrying a buried grave of her own, and now is when we finally learn what it is. Back home, in a dying little town, Karen was the family screw-up. Her mother was gone, her father was drowning trying to keep a failing diner alive, and Karen was tangled up with the local drug dealer and using hard. One violent night, it all detonated, and when the smoke cleared, her brother Kevin was dead in a wrecked car. Karen was in it deep enough that only the local sheriff burying the details kept her out of a prison cell. Her father looked at her, blamed her, and told her to leave. She ran to New York carrying the weight of a brother she got killed. It is the entire reason she fights the way she does now, like a woman trying to save enough strangers to balance a scale that will never come level. For years she kept that grave sealed and told no one. It is the private wound underneath everything she does. Then Fisk does the cold math on Karen and decides she knows far too much to keep breathing. So he sends his aimbot to the one place on Earth she feels safe, the church that took her in when she had nowhere else. Dex, dressed as Daredevil.
Where is Karen Page?
Tears through Clinton Church hunting her down, going through anyone unlucky enough to stand between him and Karen Page. And Matt is already there, because he came to warn her that Fisk had finally figured out exactly who she was. It becomes a nightmare inside a sanctuary. And in the middle of all of it, Dex throws a baton meant for Matt's head, and the old priest, Father Lantom, steps in its path. He dies right there, on the cold floor of his own church, with Matt and Karen kneeling helplessly beside him. And it breaks something in Matt that no beating ever could, because the baton was meant for Matt, not the priest, and Lantom only caught it because Matt led the danger to that church. Worse, Matt had Fisk dead to rights that same night, a real chance to end it all, and he walked away from that chance to protect the people he loves. That trade got the kindest man he ever knew killed for nothing. Matt is now certain there is no forgiving what he's done. He is done being careful, done being good. Part of him just wants to hunt Fisk down and end him and be damned for it. And the people who love him can see exactly where he's headed, and it scares them to death. Karen and Foggy watching a decent man quietly decide that a murder might be the same thing as mercy, terrified that if he steps over that line, they'll lose the Matt they know for good. But Nadim, at last, wakes all the way up. Somewhere in the wreckage, the ambitious agent who kept telling himself he was managing the situation finally admits he was the one being managed the entire time, that he sold his badge and his soul for a mortgage payment and a monster's approval. And he decides to burn the whole thing down, even if it burns him too. He sits and records a sworn statement on camera, laying the machine bare. The shakedowns, the corrupted agents, the code name, the killings, all of it. He puts hard proof from the inside into his friend's hands, and Foggy carries it straight to Blake Tower, the very district attorney he'd spent the whole season trying to unseat, and together, they drag it before a grand jury, enough to bury Fisk for the rest of his natural life. Fisk's answer is the answer he always reaches for. He sends Dex, and Dex murders Ray Nadim in front of his own family. A good man, a flawed man, who found his spine one day too late, gunned down for the crime of finally doing the right thing. But here's the thing Fisk didn't count on. The recording outlives the man. Nadim's widow and his friends get that tape into the right hands, and a dead agent's last words become the knife pointed at everything Fisk built. Which brings us to the wedding, because after all of it, the shakedowns and the killings and the empire, Fisk finally gets the one thing this was really about. He marries Vanessa, in a grand ballroom at the top of the hotel he owns, surrounded by the city that fears him. For about 10 minutes, the man has everything, and then it all comes for him at once. Nadim's confession starts making the rounds, and the fake Daredevil crashes the reception, except this time he isn't Fisk's weapon anymore. Matt got to Dex first, with the truth that detonated whatever loyalty was left in him. Fisk had Julie killed, the one person Dex built his whole fragile self around, purely so Fisk could slide into her place as the only anchor Dex had left. So a betrayed, grief-crazed Dex has come to his master's wedding to make him pay for it. So the ballroom becomes a three-way war under the chandeliers. Matt against Dex, two men faster and more damaged than any two people have a right to be, while Fisk scrambles to get his brand new wife clear of the carnage his own choices built. Matt finally gets the better of Dex, and then Fisk, in one last act of pure self-preservation, destroys his own weapon, breaking the man's back and leaving him crumpled, unable to move on the floor. That leaves Matt and Fisk face to face, and this is the moment the whole season has been walking toward. Fisk, cornered, begs Matt to kill him because a dead martyr can't be caged, and Fisk knows no prison has ever held him for long. And Matt, who has spent this whole stretch convinced that killing Fisk was the only answer that would ever stick, finally refuses, not out of weakness. It is the hardest thing he does all season, harder than any beating. Standing over the man who took so much from him, wanting it more than he has ever wanted anything, and choosing to lower his hand, because he will not let this man turn him into a murderer and strip away the person he is. Instead, he does something smarter and crueler than a killing. He makes Fisk a promise. Go back to your cage, keep my secret, and never lay a finger on Karen or Foggy again, or I will prove that your new wife ordered the hit on Ray Nadim, and she will rot in a cell right alongside you. To keep Vanessa free, the untouchable man surrenders. They arrest Wilson Fisk at his own wedding, and with the fake Daredevil exposed for exactly what he is, a broken federal agent in a costume, and the real one standing there as living proof that Matt Murdock's other half never set foot in that newsroom, Daredevil gets his good name back. The city that spent all this time being taught to hate him has to swallow the fact that the man in the mask was the one telling the truth the whole time. And Matt somehow finds his peace. He spent the whole season at war with God, but he keeps circling back to something the old priest once told him, that the design of the whole thing is like a great picture stitched in thread. And the heartbreak of being alive is that we only ever glimpse it from behind, all knotted ends and murky color, never the beauty waiting on the far side of the cloth. Matt looks at his own ragged threads, the losses, the guilt, the pain that never quite stops, and decides that if any single one of them had gone another way, he'd never have become the man in the mask. People died on his watch, who never should have, but so many more got to live because of him. Maybe every last bit of it happened exactly the way it needed to. The priest's dying words had been a plea for forgiveness, and Matt lands on the idea that forgiveness might be the only thing that gives a person a future at all, instead of a life spent clawing at a past that can't be changed. So he stops choosing between the two men he has been. The lawyer and the devil finally settle into one person at peace with himself. He makes his peace with his mother, the nun who gave him away and then spent a lifetime praying for the son she couldn't keep. And he asks her to help him find his footing, the way the older priest used to. And Matt, Foggy, and Karen, battered and grieving and very much alive, raise a glass over a fresh napkin to a brand new firm. Nelson, Murdock, and Page. But peace for a man like Matt was only ever going to be a truce. Fisk is back in a cage, stripped of everything, with one thing left to want. And a caged animal that has slipped its cage once tends to spend every waking hour studying the locks. And the very last thing the season shows us is the broken sniper laid out on an operating table. Surgeons quietly rebuilding his shattered spine with steel, which is a deeply ominous way to leave things for a man whose whole nightmare is that he never misses. For a while there, the good guys were winning. The firm had a name on the door again. It was taking the kind of clients who could never afford it, and the man who used to own this city was locked away somewhere he could not reach anyone. Hell's Kitchen felt almost safe, which is exactly the kind of calm that gets somebody killed. It starts at Josie's, the old bar, the whole crew jammed into a booth to send off a retiring cop named Cherry. Matt is there, Karen is there, and Foggy is there, holding court, flirting badly with a colleague, calling the firm by its initials like a proud dad. It is a good night. Then Foggy's phone rings. A skittish client of his named Benny, a guy who got tangled up in something out of Red Hook, is holed up in Foggy's apartment down the block and swearing that someone is coming for him. Foggy figures it's just Benny being Benny. It is not. The someone coming is Dex. The human aimbot from the old days, the assassin who once wore the horns to frame Matt, his shattered spine long since rebuilt and back on the hunt. He reaches Benny first, then he comes to the bar, and he is looking for Foggy. What follows is the worst night of Matt's life, and that's saying something. Foggy goes down outside. Matt grabs what he can and takes Dex across the rooftops in a brutal, screaming brawl. And none of it matters, because Karen is already on the ground with Foggy, telling him to keep his eyes open, telling him help is on the way, and help does not come in time. Foggy Nelson dies in the street with his best friend a rooftop away, and the woman who loved them both pleading with him to stay. Dex slips off into the dark, and the kindest man any of these people ever knew is just gone, and I can never forgive the show for killing Foggy, dang it. Cut forward about a year. That version of them is over. Matt has made himself a promise, and he says it out loud to anyone who will listen. He is going to trust the courts with all of it, and he is not going to be that other man anymore. He puts the horns away for good. Dex is convicted on 11 counts and buried under a life sentence with no parole. And at the hearing, Matt stands and tells the judge that no punishment will ever add up to justice, because justice would be Foggy still breathing. Karen flies back for that one day, and then she is finished. She has taken a job clear across the country. She lost Foggy, then she lost Matt, who went silent on her for weeks, and she is done bleeding for a man who will not talk to her. She leaves him a small keepsake from that last night at Josie's, tells him to look after himself, and then she is gone too. Meanwhile, the man in the very expensive suit is putting himself back together. It turns out that while Wilson Fisk was recovering, Vanessa ran the whole operation, kept the 5 families in line, and made the business, in her words, impossible to touch, so that nothing Fisk ever laid a hand on again could be called a crime. She also, during his long absence, had an affair with a man named Adam. Fisk comes home already knowing.
I know about Adam, Vanessa.
Do not kill him.
Not that man anymore.
Here is the part that should be a punchline and somehow is not. Wilson Fisk runs for mayor. The crime lord who spent years grinding the city under his heel puts on a mask of a public servant, gets on television, and announces a campaign to clean up the streets and rid the city of vigilantes. His whole pitch is that he can fix it, and New York, exhausted and frightened and sick to death of costumes, starts to believe it. I don't. Whatever. Around the same time, a colleague plays matchmaker and drops Matt into an ambush coffee meeting with a Tribeca therapist named Heather Glenn, telling each of them the other one is a client. It goes badly, and then it goes wonderfully. Matt clocks her Queen's accent in about 4 seconds. She is sharp and funny, and for the first time in a long while, he is not so alone. Fisk and Matt actually sit down together, 2 men each pretending they have buried their darker half. Fisk swears that Foggy's death was not his doing. He also needles Matt about how, up on that rooftop, he looked like he was enjoying himself, and warns him to stay in his own lane, because once he is mayor, there will be no patience for people in silly costumes. Matt, raised on both grace and retribution, tells them that if he steps over the line, Matt will be there. Then the results come in. Fisk wins, 53%. The Kingpin of New York is now its mayor. Governing turns out to be just another kind of theater for him. He delivers an anti-vigilante inaugural, halts his own motorcade to personally order a crew to fill a pothole while a crowd cheers, and when the city's beloved police commissioner tries to quit in protest, Fisk calmly reveals a secret he has been sitting on, refuses the man every concession the force is asking for, and keeps him on a leash. He does not so much run the police as own them. He is also quietly collecting people. A young journalist who runs a scrappy little online outfit starts covering the campaign, and Fisk pulls her close, hands her access, plays the humble reformer for her cameras. Her last name is Urich. She is the niece of the reporter Fisk had killed years ago, and she has no clue that the man charming her is the one who did it. He runs his staff the same way he ran his crews, on loyalty and fear. When a fumbling young true believer on his team botches something badly and confesses, certain he is finished, Fisk does not fire him. He praises the kid's loyalty and courage, keeps him close, and then warns him in a flat and pleasant voice that a second slip of that kind would be his very last. Into all of this walks Matt's next case. A decorated Army vet and neighborhood accountant named Hector Ayala steps in to break up 2 men beating a defenseless guy on a subway platform. The 2 men turn out to be plainclothes cops. One of them ends up dead on the tracks, and Hector is arrested for killing a police officer. Matt takes the case for nothing, because he believes the man. Then his investigator, Cherry, surfaces the detail Hector left out. Hector moonlights as a masked vigilante called the White Tiger. Matt is furious because a police officer is dead, and he needs to know every way this can go wrong before he can win it. And in the kind of coincidence only this show would dare, the therapist Fisk and Vanessa start seeing for their marriage is Heather Glenn. Matt's girlfriend is now counseling Matt's oldest enemy, and not one of the three of them has any idea. And behind that closed door, Heather starts to feel something cold moving under Fisk's calm, enough that she quietly asks Vanessa whether she feels safe in her own marriage. In a holding cell, waiting, Hector tells Matt about home, a beach in Puerto Rico, and a tiny tree frog that does not croak so much as chirp out its own name, a creature that takes one mate for life and calls out for that one love every single sunset. Matt swears to him he will stand on that sand again with his family. Remember that. The trial is a knife fight. Matt gets Hector's secret identity thrown out. Then, when his star witness, the platform informant Cherry had fought to track down and keep breathing, is gotten to through his own kid and flips on the stand, and the entire defense caves in. Matt does something reckless. He kicks the door open himself and puts Hector up there as the White Tiger, recasting the mask not as a killer's habit, but as proof of a man's character. He parades one saved life after another in front of the jury, and it works. Hector Ayala is found not guilty on every count. Then, minutes after his own acquittal, Hector is shot dead in the street, one bullet, over the sound of Fisk on television calling the verdict a travesty and vowing that law and order will hold. A man proven innocent. A man who had just quietly put money down on a first little apartment for his wife, executed for the crime of embarrassing the wrong people. He never stood on that beach again. And the quiet horror under all of it is that Wilson Fisk was never clean. He has been running the five families the entire time through his fixer Buck, cracking heads over debts and hijackings out at the port. The reformed mayor is the same monster in the same nice suit. The aftermath is ugly all the way down. Hector's niece turns up at the morgue wanting to see her uncle, dead certain the police did this, and Matt has to hold her back and promise her the man who did this will be found. The surviving officer from the platform, a guy named Powell, whose whole bloodline wears the badge, keeps drifting into Matt's path with wounded pride and soft little threats, daring him to prove a single thing. Matt is fairly sure he is looking straight at Hector's killer, and there is not one thing he can do about it. Hector's murderer left a signature on the round that did it. The bullet carries a skull, the mark a certain violent man once claimed as his own, and it turns out that a slice of the police force has adopted it, a little fan club of cops with badges and an appetite for punishment. So Matt goes hunting the man behind the skull. He finds Frank Castle, the Punisher, holed up and bitter, and Frank does not offer help. Frank offers a mirror. He tells Matt he did not come here for permission. He came because he wants to get his hands on someone and hurt them, and he is afraid of what that means. He pushes Matt toward the one thing Matt cannot say, and when he finally forces him to say Foggy's name, a year of buried grief and rage comes up all at once. Two broken men end the night agreeing on a single thing. Neither of them will ever come close to the decency of the friend they lost. Fisk, for his part, is chasing a legacy. He wants to gut and rebuild the rotting Red Hook port, and he drags his staff through every survey and permit and council step it demands, because the man who despises red tape has decided to smother it with patience. On a quieter track, Matt burns a day on a throwaway case, a broken, worn-down man arrested for lifting a box of caramel corn, who explains that the city will happily spend far more to cage him than it would ever spend to feed him. Matt wins him a lighter sentence, and it changes nothing. And Adam, Vanessa's lover, the one Fisk promised to spare? Fisk kept him in a box. As this stretch closes, Fisk stands over the terrified man, wraps a borrowed line about forgiveness around his throat, and does exactly what the Kingpin was always going to do. Which brings us to a bank on St. Patrick's Day, where Matt happens to be sitting because his over-leveraged firm needs a loan and a kind assistant manager named Yusuf Khan is gently turning him down. Then an Irish crew seizes the place. On the surface, they are after cash to settle a debt owed to a Red Hook boss named Luca. Underneath, they are after one specific diamond and one specific box, sent by a hidden employer with a man planted on the inside. Matt spends the entire standoff as the blind lawyer in the corner, and he cannot help himself. He talks the crew out of killing anyone, stalls for time, moves through the building in ways a blind man had no business managing, lifts the diamond off one of the robbers, and when the police stop negotiating and prep to storm in, he turns the whole mess into a distraction that gets every hostage out breathing. He never puts on the horns, but everyone in that room felt him, the man he keeps swearing he is not, straining against the promise. Afterward, the diamond is simply gone, quietly routed off to Luca, and the only warm thing left is a brand new friendship with Khan and a standing invitation to dinner across the river. Matt Murdock spent a year insisting the devil was dead and buried. He is about to learn the city has other plans, and that whatever has begun painting its rage across the walls of Hell's Kitchen is not going to wait around for him to make up his mind. The murals turn out to be made of people. For a while, the whole city had been posting those strange, gorgeous street pieces and treating the artist behind them like the coolest thing going. Then sanitation tries to scrub one off a wall and can't, because it's sealed under epoxy. And under the epoxy is human blood. The forensics only get worse. 12 murals, dozens of separate DNA profiles, a body count that starts around 60 and keeps climbing. There is a serial killer loose in New York. He signs his work, and he goes by Muse. Fisk's response tells you exactly what kind of mayor he really is. He warns nobody. A serial killer panic would wreck the clean city he's selling, so he buries it and turns it into a weapon. He stands up an anti-vigilante task force built from the worst cops on the force, the same brutal fan club that put a bullet in Hector Ayala, hands them special powers, strips their body cameras, and tells them to stop hiding their faces and take the city back. His new attack dog is a Chicago transfer named Cole North, a guy who beat a suspect half to death and calls it initiative. Officially, the task force exists to catch Muse. Really, it's Fisk's private army, and he's itching to aim it at the one man in horns he's wanted gone for years. There's a wrinkle in his empire building, though. The real money in this city, the people who were quietly rich long before Fisk put on a sash, don't like his obsession with the port or his war on vigilantes, and they let him know it. They can't have him whacked, exactly, but the right word in the right ear and he could kiss Gracie Mansion goodbye. Fisk smiles and keeps going, because the port is the whole point, and he's only just getting started. Meanwhile, Hector's niece, Angela, has been finishing her uncle's work. Hector was tracking the people going missing around the old shut-down train tunnels, and it turns out those missing people are Muse's murals. Angela pushes Matt to help, calls him out for being a big office lawyer who only saves the little guy in his own terms, and when he waves her off, she goes digging alone. Then she doesn't come home. Matt has spent a year keeping a promise to a dead man, going to church, trying to believe the courts are enough. He is not fine. His girlfriend Heather, writing the success of her last book, is writing a new one about masks and why we revere the people who wear them. And she keeps innocently asking Matt to introduce her to a vigilante. Maybe Frank Castle, maybe even Daredevil. He deflects. But when Angela vanishes into a serial killer's hunting ground and nobody official is coming for her, something in him finally gives. He puts the suit back on, finds Angela in the killer's basement half drained and barely alive, and gets her out. She lives, and from her hospital bed she tells the blind lawyer all about the man in the devil suit who saved her. With no clue, she's saying it to his face. Daredevil is back, and the whole city knows it, which is the exact excuse Fisk has been waiting for. Here's where it gets even worse. Muse has a name, Bastion Cooper, a rich kid with a long paper trail of institutions and a taekwondo coach who turned up dead on the family estate when Bastion was 16. Cause unknown. Nobody ever looking too hard at why. And Bastion has a therapist, Heather Glenn, Matt's Heather, who has been treating this young man for months, has no idea the art he keeps thanking her for unlocking is painted in blood. In her office, he rambles about a childhood dream of red balloons and a birthday cake and parents who never quite see him, and he tells her she's the key, that she freed something in him, and she thinks she's watching a fragile patient find himself. When Bastion decides his masterpiece is a murder-suicide with his muse at the center, the muse he means is her. Daredevil reaches the tunnel in time. In the struggle, Heather kills Bastion herself, in self-defense, and Daredevil holds her together and slips out a window right before the task force breaches. Then Fisk does the most Fisk thing imaginable. He takes the win. His task force killed Muse. Daredevil was never there, and he leans on BB Urich until she prints it. The city throws a parade for the anti-vigilante mayor who saved them from the masked freak. Heather goes home in pieces, having killed her own patient, never knowing the man in the horns who saved her life is the man she loves. She also starts clocking Matt's bruises, the disappearing, the way he's checked out, and quietly wonders if it's some kind of self-harm. The Empire, meanwhile, is cracking from the inside. Luca and the old crime families aren't earning under a mayor who keeps squeezing them, and Luca goes to Vanessa to feel out whether it might be time for a change at the top. Vanessa, sidelined and quietly furious at the husband who left her and killed her side piece, does not exactly say no. Matt, for his part, has pulled a thread he can't drop. Fisk quietly has Dex moved out of protective custody and into general population, which is a slow-motion death sentence, and Matt needs to know why the mayor suddenly wants Foggy's killer dead. At Josie's, of all places, it clicks. Josie remembers Foggy cracking the good whiskey the night he died, the bottle he saved for a win. Foggy was celebrating early because he already knew he was going to win. He wasn't a random target for an assassin settling scores. He was silenced. Somebody killed him to bury whatever he had found. So Matt goes to Rikers and sits across from Dex and asks him flat out whether Fisk hired him to kill Foggy Nelson. Dex plays his predator and prey games, bargains, dangles the answer in exchange for a way out, and then smashes his own face into the table to frame Matt on his way out the door. Matt leaves with nothing usable except the certainty that he's right about the shape of it. The shape comes together at Fisk's black tie fundraiser for his beloved Red Hook port. A ballroom of rich people admiring themselves while the mayor works them for money. When one guest won't invest, Fisk has Officer Powell drag him off and beat him bloody. And when Gallo tries to stop it, Powell tells the commissioner he doesn't answer to him anymore. By now, the task force counts as a win. The numbers say vigilante crime is down. The lawsuits over its methods keep stacking up, and Fisk could not care less, because in his world the brutal way is the way that gets results. Daniel, the eager kid from the campaign, is now deputy mayor and Fisk's propaganda chief. Bibi quietly starts feeding a resistance, teaming with Gallo, who is sitting on files about every dirty cop, and has been publishing against the mayor without his name on it. And Matt's faith in the law is collapsing in real time. He refuses to let a guilty client lie on the stand, tells the man to his face that he's done babysitting chaos, and starts to sound like someone who no longer believes the system does anything but grind good people into dust. Hector was innocent and got a bullet. Leroy got jail time for lifting some caramel corn, and now Heather thinks Fisk is right. Heather is at the ball too, hurt that Matt keeps vanishing on her and shaken that he went all the way to Rikers to sit with the man who killed Foggy. Then, on the dance floor, he stops circling and says it out loud, not to Fisk, to Vanessa. He knows she had Foggy killed. Vanessa doesn't blink, and she has a blade of her own, because she knows Matt is Daredevil, and would love to hand that to Heather. Before any of it can land, Dex breaks out of Rikers, opens fire on the Fisks from a balcony, and Matt, on pure reflex, throws himself in front of the man he hates most in the world and takes the shot. Here is the truth he nearly dies for. It was Vanessa. While her husband was gone and she ran everything, she sprang Dex from custody herself and paid him to erase Foggy and his client Benny, because Foggy had stumbled onto something in that dumb little truck robbery case that could bring the whole empire down. Foggy had found an 1855 charter that makes Red Hook Port a free port, a strip of land answerable to no city and no country, which means the Fisks can launder and smuggle and gamble there fully inside the law, and Fisk's shiny new complex would be a sovereign criminal city-state hiding in plain sight. Of course, there'd be no way the United States of America would allow that to happen, but I digress. Fisk himself says the quiet part to Vanessa. She already ran millions through that port, and now that he's mayor, together they can run billions. Foggy thought he was fighting a robbery charge. He was holding the key to everything, so Vanessa had him silenced. Matt wakes in a hospital having saved Fisk's life, which Fisk finds inconvenient, because a dead hero martyr is worth more to him than a live vigilante, so he sends his kill squad to finish Matt in recovery. What Fisk doesn't count on is Karen, who has been building a new life out in San Francisco and flew home the second she heard Dex escaped. Unwilling to let Matt face this alone, and she calls the one person she trusts to keep him breathing, Frank Castle. The Punisher plants himself between Matt and Fisk's cops and does what the Punisher does, baby. And for one long, ugly night, Daredevil and the Punisher fight back to back. Frank keeps needling him about why a man would take a bullet for a monster like Fisk, and Matt admits it's a good question. They corner Cole North, the cop who executed Hector, and North does not survive the night, though Matt, even here, even now, will not be the one to cross that line. Karen, back at last, agrees to be his eyes, and together they dig Foggy's unfiled motion out of storage and finally understand what he died protecting. Then, Fisk stops waiting for a crisis and builds one. To seal a city off, you need a real and present threat, so he manufactures the threat. Quietly leaning on a man at the power company to kill the lights, he drops the city into a blackout, blackmails the entire city council into line with dirt on every last one of them, and murders Commissioner Gallo on his way to Albany to stop him. the last honest man in the building telling him to his face that under the sash he was still the Kingpin. Then tells the cameras Gallo simply resigned. In the dark, the city loots and panics while task force cops beat anyone in a mask. On live television, Fisk brands every vigilante a criminal, sets an 8 o'clock curfew, and puts New York under martial law. Fun fact, a mayor cannot declare anyone criminals or declare martial law, but I digress, and he twists one more knife, offering Heather a post as his commissioner of mental health, traumatized and convinced he's the only order left standing. She says yes, Matt's girlfriend just joined the regime. For a therapist, she's a horrible judge of character. Frank gets a different offer. The cops who worship his skull try to recruit their idol, and Frank looks at the fascists wearing his symbol, calls them a circus of clowns who know nothing about his pain or his loss, and takes them apart, learning each man's name and where he's from before he ends him, one warm and terrible conversation at a time. And Matt finally says the thing he spent a year running from. He threw Dex off that roof because he wanted to kill him. Since Foggy died, he hasn't known who he is. His mistake was believing he was above the darkness, instead of admitting it lives in him too. The Wrath sitting right next to the Mercy. Karen once asked what the darkness was actually like for him, and he told her it was never dark at all. It was like 1,000 suns. She tells him Foggy saw all of it, the light and the dark both, and loved him anyway, and that she does too. So Matt doesn't charge the mayor's mansion to die a martyr. He chooses to be smart and patient, and to take his city back the long way. Resist, rebel, rebuild, without fear. Matt Murdock went looking for who killed his best friend and found a city being turned into a cage, with the woman he loves helping to lock the door. He is finished being one man in a mask. Whatever comes next, he is going to need an army. The martial law worked, apparently, and Fisk's police state is a hit somehow. Violent crime is down, property crime is down, and you can feel it walking the block. New York, by the numbers and by the mood, has never been safer, and a frightened, grateful city adores the strong man who pulled it off. Because, that would make sense, which is the whole trick. Nobody questions a cage while the trains run on time, except for, those very independent New Yorkers, but I digress. But underneath the safety, Fisk is a criminal running the biggest scam of his life. He has turned his sovereign Red Hook Freeport, the one Foggy died over, into a smuggling pipeline, and right now it's moving military-grade weapons, launchers and assault rifles by the ton, for shadowy partners a lot bigger than the mob. Standing against all of it is a resistance that fits in a phone booth. Matt in his horns, Karen back from San Francisco and all in, and BB Urich working the inside. Their opening shot is a boat. Daredevil boards a freighter called the Northern Star. The crew scuttles it on standing orders to sink if they are ever boarded, and the thing rolls over in the harbor, blocking the port and dragging Fisk's dirty cargo into the daylight. Fisk's answer is to lie loudly. He brands it a terrorist strike, pulled off by Hell's Kitchen's masked devil, and sends his task force hunting Daredevil and Karen both. And the only people who can prove what was really in that hold are the ship's captain and his first mate. So now both sides are racing to reach two frightened Cypriot sailors first. Meanwhile, the machine keeps grinding good people up. Fisk's Safer Streets law now equates a mask with terrorism and carries a mandatory life sentence. Another thing that a mayor can't do. And the vigilante trials are about to begin. The first man up is Jacques, a wealthy socialite the state says is a masked fighter called, reasonably enough, the Swordsman. His lawyer is Kirsten McDuffie, running the old firm as a legal aid lifeboat for the people the task force keeps making vanish. And in a detail that should curdle your stomach, the psychiatrist doing the court-ordered evaluation is Heather Glenn, Matt's Heather, now the mental health commissioner in Fisk's administration, who threatens the man in his cell and then quietly doctors his psych report to help the prosecution paint him as a monster. The woman a serial killer tried to carve up a year ago has decided order is worth anything, and she means it. The state does try to slow it down, thank the Lord. The governor's people and the attorney general come sniffing at Fisk's emergency powers and demand oversight of the trials. And for one glorious second, it looks like someone might hold him accountable. Then a shadowy federal fixer with friends at Langley makes a phone call. The oversight quietly evaporates, and Fisk is untouchable again. Somehow. That is the shape of this whole season. Every door out of the nightmare has someone standing in it. Then Fisk plays the move that boxes Matt in completely. Instead of exposing Matt Murdock as Daredevil, he does the opposite. He goes on television and lionizes Matt Murdock as a hero, the brave blind lawyer who once took a bullet saving the mayor's life and has since gone missing. and he launches a citywide search to bring the hero home. It is diabolical. Now Fisk's admirers are hunting for beloved hero Matt Murdock, while his haters hunt for the terrorist Daredevil. And they are the same man. Matt cannot show either face in public without the other one getting him killed. Somewhere in the middle of all this, Matt goes looking for grace. He slips into the church he was raised in and asks for absolution. And he asks after the nun once posted to that parish, Sister Maggie, the woman who is secretly his own mother. She is gone, off in Rome on sabbatical for the year. So the one person alive who might have steadied him is on another continent while he quietly comes apart. And there is a new player on the board, or an old one gone fully off the leash. Poindexter is loose, and the city now has a name for the masked killer with the impossible aim. They call him Bullseye. He starts stacking up dead task force cops, which is a strange kind of gift, because every badge he drops gets hung on Daredevil the terrorist, and drives Fisk up the wall at the same time. 2 birds, 1 bullet. But when he has Matt dead to rights, he doesn't pull the trigger, and nobody can figure out what the man actually wants. The regime, for its part, is not gentle. The task force runs down the captain of the cargo ship and kills him. They corner Cherry, the firm's old investigator, and beat him until his heart gives out and he lands in a hospital bed. And out of that same barrel of bad cops crawls a familiar face, Cole North, the one who executed Hector and somehow survived the night the Punisher came. Healed up and desperate to rejoin the task force for some payback. Fisk has an army, and it does not forgive. So the Resistance fights the only way it can, with information. Somebody inside City Hall, working off a dead commissioner's old files, keeps leaking Fisk's own words, and the Resistance turns them into viral guerrilla videos. A cartoon Mayor Kingpin cheerfully confessing that his charity projects are laundering fronts and his task force exists to seize your property and cage your family. They tag the whole campaign, City Without Fear. The clips detonate across the city and vanish before Fisk's people can scrub them. And it drives Fisk to a special kind of rage, because the leak is coming from inside his own building. And now his fixers are hunting for the mole while BB walks the razor's edge between being his loudest mouthpiece and his most dangerous betrayer. Kirsten finally gets to sit with Jacques, and he lays the whole racket bare, in French, with a running comparison to the guillotine of the Reign of Terror. The vigilante trials were never about vigilantes. Fisk pressured Jacques to bankroll the port. Jacques refused, and now here he is, because if the state can brand a rich man a masked criminal, the state gets to seize everything he owns, and the law lets them keep it. Guilt is the point, so when the tribunal convenes, it is pure theater. There is not one shred of proof Jacques is the swordsman. Kirsten, who in case you forgot, is Matt's law partner now, dismantles the whole thing, and it does not matter. 3 judges, a rubber stamp, guilty on every count. Sentencing to follow. A show trial for a scared audience. But the Resistance has finally found the seam. Foggy's old 1855 charter made the Freeport perpetual and untouchable. Not how those work, but whatever. Revocable by exactly one person on Earth, the governor of New York. Marge McCaffrey is squeaky clean, boring as a beige wall, and quietly terrified of Wilson Fisk. And at a tense state dinner where everyone is circling her looking for a secret to use, the fear in the room is obvious. If Matt can drag the arms smuggling into the open, she may have no choice but to pull the plug. That becomes the plan. Prove the guns, force the governor's hand. Because apparently New York being run as a dictatorship is not enough to force the governor's hand. It is costing Matt something to get there. He is kidnapping cops now, doing recon, sounding less like a lawyer and more like Frank Castle every day. And Karen keeps reminding him that murder is not how they win, mostly to remind herself. In the rare quiet moments, the two of them still ache for what is gone. For Nelson, Murdock, and Page, and the version of Matt who got to be just a lawyer. And he keeps promising he is moving forward while they both know he never will. He talks a sympathetic task force officer into slipping him access to Red Hook, then breaks in to torch the weapons and blow the lid off. The weapons are already gone, moved deeper into the port, but what he finds instead is worse and better. Fisk has not just been caging vigilantes down there, he has been disappearing ordinary people, and Daredevil tears the place open and gets as many of them out as he can under a wall of gunfire. He does not do it alone. A teenager named Angela Del Toro, Hector's niece, comes charging into the fight to save her aunt, picks up her uncle's fallen mantle without being asked, and starts becoming a hero. And Fisk, humiliated and leaking on every side, has the boat's night crew slaughtered so he can pin one more massacre on the vigilante he calls a terrorist. Here is what all that firepower was actually for. The weapons are a central intelligence operation, meant to arm a war on the other side of the world, run through Fisk's free port because a sovereign scrap of American soil is the perfect place to move a shipment that never officially existed. Fisk is not the boss of this thing. He is the conduit. And his shady federal partners are getting impatient because Daredevil has exposed their golden port and the governor is openly threatening to tear up its charter. Fisk is caught between the spies who own him and a city he is losing his grip on. So he does what Fisk does when he is cornered. He puts on a show. He announces a charity boxing match, Mayor of New York against a professional heavyweight, held at Fogwell's gym, which happens to be the rundown room where Matt's father boxed and bled and where some of the only good memories Matt has of the man still live. Bullseye picks the same stretch to lure a task force squad into a diner with a fake tip that Frank Castle is inside, then wipes them out and tells a terrified witness not to worry because in his own cracked accounting, he is on the side of the angels. The fight itself is a laundering front dressed as civic pride, and it's also bait, a giant flashing lure to draw Bullseye into the open where the task force can put him down. When the bell finally rings, it is Wilson Wildcard Fisk in the white corner against a genuine heavyweight named Mike Melendez, with BB and Daniel watching from ringside and half the task force packed into the room as muscle. The disappeared are starting to find their voices too. A nurse, Hector's widow, stands up and says her name and where she is from and that she is one of the missing and that she is not backing down. And young Angela volunteers to run a card full of evidence to a resistance contact through streets crawling with task force, understanding exactly what that mask is going to cost her and going anyway. Matt gets to Bullseye first, tracking him through the old neighborhood church to the window where the killer wakes each morning to the bells. And Matt, who has every reason in the world to end him, tells the young priest there the plain truth. He will not kill this man. What he finds up there is a broken thing trying to do math with his soul. Bullseye admits out loud what Matt has known and could not bear to hear, that a woman put him up to killing Foggy, and now he wants to balance the scales with one good deed, the single thing Daredevil will not do. He is going to kill Wilson Fisk. He cannot stand to let Matt make a martyr of the man, so he means to do it himself. While Matt is wrestling with the devil in the window, Kirsten is finally getting the testimony that could end all of it. The first mate of the cargo ship surfaces alive and gives a sworn testament, and it's everything. The Northern Star was hauling illegal military arms, no customs, no manifest, no Coast Guard, the kind of invisibility you can only buy when you own the city. All of it signed off by the man the sailors called the Kingpin, who everyone knew was the mayor, and the one man who boarded that ship to expose it was Daredevil. It is a smoking gun aimed straight at Fisk, and in that same breath, a quiet voice greets Mr. Sava and reports that Christophe has been taken care of. Fisk's people reach the witness at the worst possible moment. The night belongs to Vanessa. She has spent it in Albany doing the surgical thing her husband never could, sitting across from Governor McCaffrey and offering herself as the one guardrail on Wilson Fisk. The governor cannot stomach backing the mayor alone, but she can live with backing the pair of them. And just like that, the threat to the charter softens and the resistance' cleanest legal path narrows to nothing. Vanessa comes home with the win in her pocket, walks into Fogwell's against Fisk's explicit wishes because she will not be shut out of anything, and reaches her husband in the ring just as it comes apart. He tells her to run. He tells them to get her out. Then the gunfire starts. In the chaos of a shot meant for Kingpin, it is Vanessa who goes down, and the last sound of the night is Wilson Fisk on his knees over his wife, screaming for an ambulance. Matt Murdock spent a year proving the mayor is a criminal, and finally holds what he needs to prove it. In the same hour, the witness goes silent, and a bullet meant for Fisk finds the one person the Kingpin cannot live without. Whatever Wilson Fisk becomes with Vanessa bleeding in his arms, Mercy is not going to be part of it. Vanessa does not die on that floor. It takes longer than that, and it is so much worse. She hangs on. Fisk clears the city out of the way, flies in the best brain specialist money can find, and Vanessa makes it through a long surgery on cautious, careful hope. Then she wakes up, and she is not entirely there. She does not remember that she dislikes pineapple juice. She asks Wilson to tell her a story, the story of how they met.
I've arranged for a more private showing, but this is it. This is the gallery.
Somehow I must have known that you would walk through those doors and change everything.
Lucky them, I guess, that day.
Not luck.
And she asks again, and again, looping, slipping, the injury pulling her under while the most dangerous man in New York holds her hand and tells her their love story one more time. Then, she is gone. The one person on earth who could reach Wilson Fisk, the one guardrail on all that rage, dies in a hospital bed, and the man left behind is something you should be afraid of. While Fisk grieves, Matt does the hardest thing his conscience has ever asked of him. He keeps Bullseye alive. The assassin is bleeding out and begging to die, and Matt patches him up anyway, because Matt once threw this man off a roof wanting him dead, and saving him now is the only way Matt knows to climb back from that. Penance, mutual, for two men who both crossed a line on the same rooftop. The regime is eating its own. Fisk is convinced a mole is feeding the resistance, and his fixer, Buck, decides the leak is Daniel, the eager kid who worshipped Fisk and did whatever was asked. Buck takes him for a drive upstate, gives him a choice between a saw and a shovel, and murders the eager true believer who worshipped Fisk. Daniel goes to his grave swearing he never leaked a word, and the why of it only lands later. Through all of it, the show keeps flashing back years to two broke young associates named Matt and Foggy, saving up to open a firm. They catch a case defending a mob-connected dealer from Foggy's old block, a guy Foggy grew up around, and when a technicality could spring him, the two of them argue the way they always did, the law against the right thing. Then Matt finds the office safe empty. Foggy gave the man every dollar of their firm fund and told him to start over. Not because he deserved it, but because that was who Foggy was. When Matt finds out, he does not get angry. He asks what they are celebrating, and the answer is one word: mercy. That word is the whole soul of everything Matt is about to fight for, and the man who taught it to him is already gone. They bury Vanessa. At the funeral, a hollowed-out Fisk quietly decides he is done, one term and out. But the city he built a cage around is no longer afraid. Out in the streets, a movement has caught fire, ordinary New Yorkers chanting "Resist, rebel" outside City Hall. Fisk's police state has firmly made more enemies than it can jail, and it turns bloody fast. The crowd outside City Hall becomes a slaughter when the task force opens fire. A kid goes down in the chaos, and Powell quietly murders the one sympathetic cop who had been feeding Matt from the inside, then pins it on the Vigilantes. Fisk's answer to a city that stopped being scared is more of exactly what made them stop. And the war reaches into Matt and Karen. Karen wants Fisk dead. She reminds Matt of the night at the church years ago when he swore he would kill Fisk, and she talked him down. And she tells him she thinks she was wrong. She confesses the thing she has carried in silence, that she once killed a man named Wesley, Fisk's right hand, and that she does not regret it, because it was him or her. What if it is the same now, she asks, him or you? She finds the wounded Bullseye, and gets ready to do for Matt the thing Matt will not do for himself. Matt stops her. He tells her she keeps choosing this fight ahead of the people who love her, and he will not let her carry a killing to spare his conscience. It is an argument that has been happening again and again, and neither of them wins it. Matt even goes to Fisk directly in the raw days after the funeral and floats a truce. Both of them walk away. Both of them leave New York, and the poison drains out of the city they keep wrecking. Fisk almost bites, admits he has no idea how to stop either. Then Matt says the quiet thing, that if the two of them had never met, Foggy and Vanessa would both be still breathing, and Fisk cannot hold the moment. The truce dies in the room, for now. Meanwhile, Matt gets his answer on the guns. His investigator turns out to be Jessica Jones, a private eye whose strength is not what it used to be, and who is trying to raise a daughter through all this. She traces the arms straight to a slippery government spook named Charles, cozy with Fisk. And when he sends a hit team to her home, she hands Matt the truth. The weapons run through Fisk's free port for the agency itself. Daredevil and Jessica find the stolen cash and blow it sky high. And with Vanessa dead, the governor quietly pulls the support that Vanessa alone had guaranteed, and the state starts drawing up the papers to end Wilson Fisk. Jessica wrings the rest out of Charles before he can bolt. With the governor turning on him, Fisk's endgame is to have her killed and drop a puppet into her chair, because she is the one person alive who can revoke the port charter, and with her gone, the city belongs to him for good. The clock on stopping him is suddenly measured in days. The saddest thread closes in a flashback. Daniel on his last good night at his mother's house on Staten Island for his birthday, with BB, because, as we know, BB Urich was the leak all along, running the resistance broadcasts to avenge the uncle Fisk murdered, and Daniel, who had fallen for her, found the evidence in her pocket. He could have handed her over. Instead, he let her run and told her to make it count. And Buck tortured him for her whereabouts and got nothing but refusal. Daniel died protecting her. The kid nobody took seriously turned out to be the bravest man in Fisk's whole operation. So Fisk plays his last card. And it's a good one. He has Karen arrested and hauls her in front of his own vigilante court, a public show trial to convict Daredevil's partner and make the whole city cheer, and to bait Daredevil into the open. But a show trial has cameras, and Matt walks straight into that courtroom alive as the missing hero Mayor Fisk himself made famous, and sits down as Karen's co-counsel. The best trap Fisk ever built just became Matt Murdock's stage. Before the trial, Matt and the healed Bullseye reach a terrible peace. Matt hands him the one good deed he has been begging for, a way to balance his scales, and tells him the truth first, that he hates him for Foggy, for Father Lantom, for Nadim, for every wasted life, and that part of him still needs to forgive him anyway. The forgiveness is not really for Bullseye. It is for the dead. In court, Matt takes the whole regime apart on live television. He gets Officer Powell to admit the task force was Fisk's creation, and that its welfare check on a blind lawyer arrived in armored trucks. He turns Heather's own book on vigilante masks against her, pointing out that she is the one hiding behind a face, the Fisk administration. And then he calls Wilson Fisk himself to the stand, plays the sworn deposition of the dead first mate, naming the Kingpin as the man behind the arms, and pushes until there is only one card left to play. Matt needs a witness who was on that ship. There is exactly one in that room. So he says it out loud, in open court, to the entire city. He is Daredevil. A blind man who somehow fights. He testifies to what he saw, that Fisk smuggled the weapons and armed his private militia with them, and the confession detonates the case. The judges concede that a court built to enforce Fisk's own law has no business deciding anything, and Karen walks free. The Attorney General moves in with a phone book of charges: racketeering, smuggling, corruption, attempted murder, freezes Fisk's assets, because as we all know, that worked so well the last time, seizes the port, and tells him it's time to resign. Cornered, stripped, and told to resign, Fisk does not resign. He goes on the air and calls it a siege, warns the city its masked enemies are coming for everyone, and swears he will stand and fight, daring every New Yorker to stand with him. It is a man begging for a war to save himself, and bringing in the National Guard hands him the exact chaos he is fishing for. Fisk will not go quietly. He locks down the courthouse and calls for a war, and the city answers, but not the way he wanted. The people who have had enough pour toward the building chanting to bring them Fisk. His own task force starts to crack when Soldad forces Powell to admit he had Hector killed over a lie. His staff abandons him, and Daredevil reaches him at the center of it all, with the whole thing about to burn. This is where the entire saga has been driving, and it does not end with a body. Matt tells Fisk it is over for both of them and lays out the only path left: prison, where Fisk dies locked away from every memory of Vanessa. Or the fight starts over, and the poison and the dead go around again. Then Matt offers him the one thing Fisk swears he is not allowed to offer: grace. Take the exile, leave New York, give the city the peace that neither of them will ever have. And Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, the man who kept getting back up for years, looks at the devil who spared him and says he accepts. Matt held the line Karen begged him to cross, and holding it was what finally won. There is a cost, and Matt always knew there would be. He and Karen get one quiet moment to imagine a normal life. The running finally done and the mask finally off. Both of them admitting they are too messed up to know how, and wanting to try anyway. And then they arrest him, Matthew Murdock, booked for the whole ledger of everything Daredevil ever did. He gave up the secret to save the city, and the city takes him for it, pulled away from Karen just as the fight to be together finally started.
I love you.
I love you too.
And the city breathes. Somewhere a father comes home to a little girl who runs into his arms. Bibi Urich, who paid for the truth in blood, gets handed a job at the Bulletin. Her murdered uncle's paper, honest journalism reborn out of everything Fisk tried to bury. Hell's Kitchen is still standing. The devil is in a cage, but the people are free, and the man who did it with mercy. Oh, okay. That is the entire story of Daredevil. If you made it this far, you are the reason this channel exists, literally and figuratively. So, if you would, drop a like, subscribe, tell me down in the comments what you want recapped next, and I will see you in the next one.